About 175 voters and residents of Londonderry turned out to take part in their annual March Town meeting at the Old Town Hall in South Londonderry, filling the room to standing room only. Voting on warrant articles in Londonderry is done mostly off the floor, but there were also 2 articles dealing with wastewater improvements which were to be decided by paper ballot. Larry Gubb, of the town's wastewater committee, was waiting at the door to urge voters to approve both articles, which called for 2 local matches of about $800,000 to supplement a much larger pot of federal money and state grants totaling about $7 million to make wastewater improvements in both the North and South villages.
So these are just highlights from our report.
I am not a business owner. I am a
that
lifelong heritage
point to
resident
all
of
the
London.
basic facts about the bond vote today, which is
One of my sons
essentially to vote for paying for 10% of the total cost, which is about $8 million, and the town has to come up with about $800,000. So we're hoping that
challenges Londonderry
people
faces.
vote
Why do
for
you think
both
this is,
villages because there's a need in
part
both
of the,
villages.
Once inside and the meeting called to order, voters re-elected Tom Cavanaugh and Jim Fleming, incumbent select board members, to new terms. They also made quick work of the warrant articles until they reached one that called for the town to spend $50,000 on a new part-time position of short-term rental administrator, which prompted some extended questions and answers.
I was wondering, will the fees completely offset the cost of the administrator?
Yes, the fee structure we've come up with is designed to offset all fees. So it will be paid for by short-term rental operators, not the taxpayers. Yes, sir.
As I understand it, we don't have rules and regulations in place at this point, so what is the point of having an administrator if the administrator has no rules or structure to enforce?
We have passed the short-term rental ordinance. It went into effect February 17th, correct? Which has our rules. Yeah. Yes, sir.
John Wright, I'm just not sure what the position entails. Maybe you.
So the position would be to register all short-term rentals, investigate if there's any ones that people are trying not to register, and also enforce any rules such as noise complaints and such. Yes, sir.
The word enforcement came up. I'm just a little bit confused on how that's going to happen, and then the question would be, or what, to those folks who you're trying to enforce the ordinance on?
The enforcement is written down in the ordinance. I believe it's a $250 fine per day. There are so many cases of enforcement that you can go through, and then you lose your license for 1 year.
Obvious question, what are the registration fees?
So we finally came up with a registration fee schedule last night at our select board meeting. For hosted, it is $150 a year. For unhosted, it's $500 a year.
Approximately how many short-term rentals are there in town?
Our best figures, it's very hard to find out because Airbnb, VRBO, all of them won't give you any information. The state doesn't give you the information. So our best guess is 140, could be more.
In the end, the measure was approved and voters moved on to consider 2 articles which would establish a 1% local option tax on meals and sales of alcoholic beverages. The second article called for a 1% local option tax on general sales. In the end, the voters approved the measure for the 1% local option tax on meals and alcohol, but turned down the proposal for a 1% local option tax on sales. Several students were also in the audience from the Floodbrook School, attending their first town meeting, and we had a chance to get their reactions to the meeting. So what do you think so far? Let's start with you.
I think it's pretty interesting, you know? It's pretty cool.
Okay. And Owen?
It's pretty cool, pretty interesting.
Pretty interesting. A lot of cool topics discussed.
So what made it cool and interesting? Was there a certain topic that you...
A lot of articles, like Article 9 took a long time.
The one about the short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that hard to follow, all the back and
Yeah,
forth
a
with the
lot, yeah.
parliamentary?
A lot of nays and yays.
Do you guys study this stuff in school? Do you have any?
Maris is kind of like, kind of tells us about it. Yeah, like we did a class the other day about it.
Kind of pushed us to go to this meeting.
Yeah,
It's cool.
we wanted to learn about it.
So this is like a day off from school?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
an excuse absent. So.
Yeah.
So your social study teacher or one of the teachers said,
Yeah.
hey, since you got the day off, it's town meeting day, it'd be good to kind of go and check it out and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So what do you think? You think it's cool and interesting? You want to come back in next year?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Great. And what grade are you all in?
Eighth.
Grade. Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Meanwhile, back on the floor, Kelly Payala, the town clerk and the state representative for Londonderry, gave her report about how things were going up in Montpelier.
In terms of the flooding expenses, in the budget adjustment that was just passed before we left Montpelier for town meeting week, and the governor is going to sign, there is money in fiscal year 24 to cover the state match for any FEMA funding that was associated with public assistance and the local match. So the town shouldn't incur any local expenses for any repairs to anything that came as a result of the flooding. And in addition to that, the town will be getting $75,000 for, it's called a local economic impact grant, and that is meant to be flexible money that the town can spend on whatever it would like. So while the flooding is impacting everything still, the state has decided to bear most of the burden of covering things that are associated with FEMA, and then recognizes that municipalities have really been struggling as they've been trying to rebuild, so they're also giving us a little bit of extra money to help us recover in some other ways. And the select board will have to decide how to spend that local economic impact money, but it's coming. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that as you're talking about the municipal budget.
Voters made quick work of the articles that call for small appropriations to local nonprofit organizations and community services. And after the nearly 4-hour-long meeting was adjourned, we had a chance to get a reaction from the Select Board Chairman, Tom Cavanaugh.
I think there are some surprises as usual. Most of the articles that we thought were going to have some good discussion did. A little surprised to say the alcohol tax passed and the sales did not. So, but that's what the people wanted. So.
And what about Article 9, the one on the short-term rentals? And that seemed to generate a very long conversation here.
Yeah, there was a long conversation on that, but essentially the ordinance is no good without having someone to enforce it. And we've been asked by many people in town to write up an ordinance and have it enforced to regulate short-term rentals. So
that one passed. I guess any thoughts on the wastewater measure or a bond that I guess voters will be voting on by ballot, right?
I think that one's going to be too close to call. I really don't know where we're going to go there. I mean, it'll be a shame not to use some of the almost $8 million the state has given us in grant funding, but we'll see.
Both articles would eventually pass by comfortable margins. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.